Welcome to ICS Mahesh PU College, Dharwad. Now we are solving one model question paper for the KCET and that also purely on the reduced syllabus. Okay, without wasting time, directly get into the questions one by one. Okay, the first question we are having here that is the dimensions of the ratio of magnetic flux and permeability mu they are asking. Therefore, let us write down that is ratio over magnetic flux phi whole divided by permeability mu. Therefore, magnetic flux is given by product of B and H whole divided by mu. Permeability is given by B whole divided by H. Okay, let us solve this. B get cancelled. Therefore, we are having here A into H. Therefore, let us write down what are the dimensions for the A and the H one by one. Therefore, where A defines the area, that is measured in terms of meter square. Therefore, for this one, we can write the dimensional formula as L raised to 2. Similarly, write down the H value. H is given by the product of number of turns per unit length and the current. Therefore, on solving this one, where N defines the number of turns per unit length, means we can write here capital N, total number of turns whole divided by length into current. Therefore, here N is a number, it's a pure number. We cannot write the dimensions for that. But L is a measurable quantity. Therefore, it has its own dimensional formula. Therefore, by leaving this one, we can write for the length, we can write here L only. And for the current, already we are having a standard dimensional value for that, that is A. Therefore, we got with the A also, we got with the H also. Take this value and substitute over here now. Therefore, if I want to get the ratio, on solving this one, we got it already A into H. What is A here? That will be here L square. Similarly, H is giving us here A whole divided by L. Therefore, let us solve this one. Therefore, on solving this one, we can write here that is L raised to 1 and A raised to 1. Okay, but if I check out our answer, we are not having only this one. We have to include a standard formula because here we can also include M raised to 0, L raised to 1. Okay, there is no time term, but we have to include with the power as 0 and we can write A as usual. Therefore, this is the dimensional formula for a ratio of magnetic flux to the permeability. Let us check out the answer. M raised to 0 is in all the answers. Therefore, yes. But L is equal to 1. Yes, L is equal to 1. Here also we are having. Okay, L is equal to 1. Here also we are having. Therefore, there is no question of this one and this one. Leave it now. Okay, left with only these options now. Again, t is equal to 0, but here we are having t is equal to 1. Therefore, this is also not possible. Therefore, we can stay with the answer M raised to 0, L raised to 1, t raised to 0 and A raised to 1 is the proper answer for a given question. Let us get into the next question. The next question we are having, the cylindrical wire has a mass of 0.3 plus or minus 0.003 gram, radius 0.5 plus or minus 0.005 millimeter and length of 6 plus or minus 0.06 centimeter. If it is so, the maximum percentage error in the measurement of its density means we are provided with one cylindrical wire. Okay, its mass they have given, radius they have given and the length they have mentioned it. If it is so, they are asking what is the maximum percentage error in the measurement of its density. Density, when they told it, we are having very standard formula. Density is equal to mass divided by volume. Therefore, by using this equation, we have to get the answer for the percentage error. We have to get the answer for the percentage error. Therefore, let us solve it step by step now. Therefore, I'll go with this equation, that is density rho is equal to mass divided by volume. Density rho is equal to mass divided by volume. Therefore, delta rho whole divided by rho is equal to mass, that can be written here, but keep one point in your mind, that is, here we are having a volume of what? Cylindrical wire. Wire's volume is given by pi into r square into L. Therefore, use this data in the above equation. Thereafter, step by step substitute the values. Therefore, by using this information, now we have to solve the above equation. Going for the above equation in the form of percentage error. Now let's have a very important idea on this one. As I need here percentage error, we can have delta rho divided by rho is equal to mass as it is, therefore delta m whole divided by m, okay, plus we are having at the denominator pi r square into L. We know that pi is a constant, no need to take it into the equation, therefore leave as it is, but we are having here r square into L. From the idea of the sum of the errors, we can write here that is 2 times the delta r whole divided by r, we can write it, plus thereafter we are having the length, thereafter delta L divided by L, we can write it now. As we need the percentage error, multiply by 100. Multiply by 100. For this also you can multiply by 100. Okay, now go on substitute the values here. Delta rho whole divided by rho, that answer we need here, delta m divided by m. This is the small error in the mass. Here is the that we are having. Let us substitute that 0.003 whole divided by 0.3. Okay, plus 2 times the delta r, because here r defines the radius. Therefore, this one will be the small r, this one will be the small delta r. Let us substitute that. Delta r can be written as here 0.005 whole divided by 0.5 plus delta L we need here, it will be the L, it will be delta L. Therefore, 0.06 whole divided by we are having here 6. Complete the bracket, multiply by 100 now. Okay, let us complete the answer now here. Therefore, 0.003 whole divided by 0.3, that is giving us a 0.01 plus 2 times the, again this also giving us a 0.01 plus this also giving us a 0.01. Therefore, complete the bracket, multiply by 100 now. Okay, let us solve this completely now. Therefore, here we are having 0.01 plus, again we are having 0.02 plus 0.01 we are having, okay, into 100. Okay, on solving this one, we are getting the answer as how much here? Very clear, it will be a 4% itself. Therefore, for a given question, the maximum percentage error for a given calculation is the 4. Therefore, option A is the right answer for a given question. Let us get into the next one. Now, here the particle shows a distance time graph. It's a distance time graph curve as shown in the figure. The maximum instantaneous velocity of the particle around the point means from this graph we have to extract where we will get the maximum instantaneous velocity. We know that there are two applications. There are two applications of position time graph, otherwise distance, we can say distance time graph. Okay, what is the first application we are having? It will explain the nature of the motion. It will explain the nature of motion. And what is the second application? That is slope drawn to the I want to generalize it, position time graph, otherwise xt graph will give us a slope drawn to the xt graph gives us velocity and also speed also. Okay, these are the two applications from the any position time graph. Okay. Now they are asking here velocity, therefore there is no work of the first application. We have to enter directly into the second application. This is our point of interest. Now check out of these 4 points, which one will be having a maximum velocity. If I check out the first, that is point S. Okay, it is too much what now parallel to the time axis. Therefore, there is no chance of having the velocity at the greater magnitude. Therefore, this is not a point for the maximum velocity. If I go for the position point T, here also we are not having that much of a what now? A slope. As a result, the point T is not also an answer for a given question now. But there is one doubt left with us, that is point Q and point R. Okay, comparing Q and R, we are getting a sharper slope for the R comparing to the Q. Okay, therefore at the point R we will obtain the maximum velocity. At the point R we are getting the maximum slope. If we are getting the maximum slope, that leads to the maximum instantaneous velocity. Therefore, by observing the options, we can say point R is the position where I have a maximum velocity. Therefore, option C is the right answer. Let us get into the next question. That is, 3 projectiles A, B and C are projected at 30 degree, 45 degree and 60 degree respectively. If RA, RB and RC are ranges of ABC respectively, then velocity of the projection is the same for ABC. Okay, now what they are telling, if this is a certain initial point, if I am considering, okay, 3 projectiles means objects has been thrown out with the different angle but with the same velocity. If it is so, what are the ranges they are asking now? Therefore, for the range we are having the equation, range is equal to u square sine of 2 theta whole divided by g, where u defines the initial velocity. Okay, as we are having 3 projectiles, for each projectile we have to write down the range equation with their corresponding angles. Therefore, for the projectile A, R subscript A, u square sine of 2 into theta is how much for the first one, that is 30 degree, whole divided by g. Therefore, we are having here that is u square sine of 2 into 30, that is 60. Therefore, sine of 60 whole divided by g. That leads to the sine 60 is how much now? Root 3 by 2. Therefore, root 3 by 2 into u square whole divided by g is the range for the first projectile. Moving on to the next one. Okay, I can do it here directly now. RB is equal to, that is u square sine of. Okay, for the second one, what is the angle we are having? That is 45. 45 into 2 is how much now? 90. Therefore, sine 90 whole divided by g. That leads to the how much now? Sine 90 is 1. Therefore, we are obtaining here u square whole divided by g is equal to RB. Okay, this is the second projectile now. Moving on to the third projectile, that is R subscript C. Therefore, u square into sine of theta is given as how much here? 60 degree. 60 into 2, how much? 120. Therefore, sine of 120 we are having whole divided by g. Sine 120 is how much now? Again, it's a root 3 by 2. Therefore, root 3 by 2 into u square by g. Therefore, here we are getting the RC value. Now, compare all the 3 answers here. RA and RC are both equal. Therefore, check out the answer where we are having the RA and the RC both are equal. Therefore, this is the option and this is the option we are having. Therefore, there is no problem with these options now. Moving on to the other datas now. Here, RA and RC are equal, but comparing to the RB, okay, those are smaller. Therefore, here RB is larger. Therefore, if I observe this value and compare with our answer, option D is the right one. Therefore, for a given question, option D is the right answer. Moving on to the next question. That is, a block rests on a rough inclined plane. What do you mean by the inclined plane? If this is a surface we are having, which is a plane one now. Inclined means the plane has to tilted by some angle. Here you can see that tilt now. Okay, a block rests on a rough inclined plane. A block we have placed here, which is under rest, and the surface is a rough one now. Okay, a block rests on a rough inclined plane, making an angle of how much degree? 30 degree. With the horizontal. Okay, the coefficient of static friction between the block and the plane is 0.8. Therefore, they have given mu value. That is of how much value here? 0.8. If the frictional force on the block is 10 Newton, okay, frictional force is always observed, okay, opposite to the direction of motion. Means the frictional force is here, okay, that is behind the what now block, because if I want to move it, it has to move forward, okay, by itself. If I make it to move, therefore frictional force will be observed in the backward direction. That I am taking here small f. Capital F will be taken for the applied force. Okay, therefore F is given as here, that is of 10 Newton. If it is so, the mass of the block they are asking. What is the mass of this block they are asking now? Okay, for this question we have to draw a free body diagram. Okay, that is, what is the free body diagram here we are having? If this is a block, okay, now here this one is a normal force we are having, and this one is a weight we are having, that is given by product of mass into gravity. Okay, that's acceleration due to gravity, and this is the angle theta. Okay, here is the frictional force we are observing in the backward direction. Okay, now if this one is a normal force and this one is a mg, by resolving this one, we will get here this one as theta, because if this is theta, this is also theta. I can make it here, it's as mg cos theta, and this one will be mg sin theta. This one will be mg sin theta. Therefore, we are provided with the two equations from the given diagram that can be written as here n equivalent to mg cos theta. Okay, this is one equation we are having from this diagram. Similarly, f is equivalent to, small f is equivalent to mg sin theta. Now, what is our question? They are asking the mass of the block. Okay, in both the equation we are having the mass. Okay, but to get the mass, I cannot go for any one of the equation, because we are not having what is the normal force for a given data. Which one is a simpler one? This one is a simpler one, because they have provided already what is the frictional force. Therefore, solve the same equation for the m now. Therefore, by using this equation, now get the answer for the m. Therefore, n is equal to f divided by g into sine of 30. F divided by g into sine of 30 is equal to m now. Therefore, what is f here? 10 whole divided by g is how much now? 10. Okay, into sine of how much here? It's a 30. Okay, sine 30 is how much now? It is 1 by 2. Therefore, goes to the numerator. So, what is the answer? That is 2 kg is the answer for a given question. Moving on to the next one. That is, a motor pump lifts 10 tons of water from the well of depth 25 meter. Okay, I draw the diagram for this one. Okay, generally when we watch the well, okay, it will be almost constructed in this way. Okay, if this is a ground, okay, where we can stand. Okay, this is a ground where we can stand. Okay, with respect to this ground, we are having a well actually. How, right? Okay, this one is a well we are having. Okay. The same thing they are telling, a motor pump lifts 6 tons of water from a well of a depth of how much meter? 25 meter. To the first floor of height 30 meter from the ground floor. Remember, this one is a ground. Okay. From here we are having how much meter? 35 meter. Here we are having first floor. Here we are having first floor. Okay. Therefore, I'll repeat the question. A motor pump lifts 6 tons of water from a well of depth of how much meter? 25 meter to the first floor of height 35 meter from the ground floor. From the ground floor. Don't think that ground floor is from the bottom of the well. Okay. Therefore, I written here diagram. That person is standing. From here it is 25 meter to the first floor. Okay, at a height of 35 meter from the ground floor in how much time? Time t is equal to 20 minutes. Time t is equal to 20 minutes. The power of the pump he is asking in terms of kilowatt. For the power we are having a direct equation. Power is equal to work whole divided by time. Work whole divided by time. What is work? Work is given by the product of force into displacement. What is the force here? I can take it here m into g, and displacement can be taken as h here. Therefore mgh whole divided by time t. Therefore p is equal to mgh divided by t. H we have to calculate, g already given. Okay, but another point we can simplify here, that is m divided by t. M divided by t, that is the amount of water which has been lifted. Okay, within a given time interval. Therefore, I can write it here m divided by t in the different step. What is the amount of water they are lifting here? 6 tons. Okay, we know that 1 ton is equal to 1000 kg. Okay, therefore mass is how much now here? 6 ton. Therefore 6 into 1000 whole divided by time is how much now? Within that we are doing the work, that is 20 minutes. Okay, convert in terms of seconds. That's 60. Therefore, on solving this equation, we are getting here 5 kg per second. 5 kg per second is the ratio over m by t. Means we got the answer for the m by t. Now g, that is 10. H we need to know here, because we had to lift the water from the bottom to the first floor. Therefore, how much distance totally it has to travel? That is 25 meter plus 35 meter. Therefore h is given by, that is total height is given by, that is 25 plus 35. How much we are getting here? That is 60. Okay, that is 50, yes, 60 meter. Therefore we ready with the h value, m by t value, and substitute for the power. So power is equal to m by t is given by 5 here already. Okay, g is equal to 10 and h is here 60. Therefore on observing this one, we are getting here 3000 watt. We are getting here 3000 watt, but answer is given in terms of kilowatt. Therefore we can write it as 3 kilowatt as an answer for a given question. Okay, this is a crucial step we have to understand. Okay, now moving on to the next one. That is, a particle is moving uniformly along a straight line as shown in the diagram. Okay, a particle is moving along a straight line. Okay, during the motion of the particle from A point to the point B, the angular momentum of the particle about the point O they are asking. About the point O they are asking. Therefore, we have to explain what will happen to the angular momentum. When we say the angular momentum, the main equation which is come in our mind is the product of mass into velocity into perpendicular distance. Remember, it's a perpendicular distance. Now, as they told, the body is traveling from point A to point B along a straight line. During this one, it does not vary its mass. Therefore, mass remains constant. And already in the question they had told, a particle is moving uniformly. Therefore, its velocity also doesn't change. And the third parameter left with us is a perpendicular distance from the reference point. Here O is the reference point. Anywhere if I observe the perpendicular distance, okay, is always remaining constant. Therefore, all the three physical quantities of the angular momentum is remaining constant. As a result, by observing the options, we can say here angular momentum is remaining constant from the given options. Okay, now let us move on to the next question. That is, the value of acceleration due to gravity at a height of 10 kilometer from the surface of the earth is x. Okay, I will bring this into the diagram. The value of acceleration due to gravity at a height of 10 kilometer from the surface of the earth. Okay, if I consider this as a earth, okay, above this it at a height of how much kilometer? 10 kilometer. We are having acceleration due to gravity. Okay, that one we are taking it as here g subscript h of a magnitude of how much here? X. Okay, now at what depth inside the earth is the same acceleration due to gravity has the same value x? At what depth inside the earth? This is the x value above the 10 kilometers from the surface of the earth. They are asking what is that distance from the surface of the earth into the, otherwise what is at what distance from the surface of the earth into the earth where we are having same acceleration due to gravity as at a kilometer of 10 kilometers from the surface of the earth they are asking. Therefore, means we need to know some other point here. Generally into the earth, otherwise at a depth of the earth we are taking here as g subscript d. Okay, here also I should get how much now? D only. But at what height? You don't know that. We need to calculate. That's the question they are asking. We know that at a height we are having, that is g into 1 minus 2h whole divided by r is the equation. At a height now. At a depth is given by g subscript d, that is g into bracket 1 minus d whole divided by r. I'll make it capital R. Therefore, these are the two equations. In both these conditions, I want to have the same acceleration due to gravity as x itself. Therefore, I can make it here gh is equal to gd. Okay, therefore, substitute that now. G into bracket 1 minus 2h whole divided by capital R, g into bracket 1 minus d whole divided by r. G get cancelled. Okay, therefore 1 minus 2h whole divided by r is equal to 1 minus d whole divided by r. 1 get cancelled, minus get cancelled. We left with only 2h whole divided by r, which is equal to d by r. Again r get cancelled. I need to have a height at which the acceleration due to gravity becomes x itself now. Therefore h is equal to that is yet okay, we need to have at what depth now, right? Therefore yes, r get cancelled here. Therefore solve for the d. Now therefore d is equal to 2 times the height is how much now here? 10. Okay, therefore how much kilometer? 20 kilometer. Okay, therefore at a 20 kilometer from this one, okay, that is from the surface of the earth, if I measure the depth, that is at a 20 kilometer, we will have the acceleration due to gravity as x itself. Okay, let us move on to the next question now. That is, the spring is stretched by applying a load to its free end. Okay, let us take a spring, okay, and it will be attached to some load now. Okay, the strain produced in the spring. Okay, now when we apply some certain weight, let us say mass is equal to some 5 kg over it now. Moment we apply the force on this spring, it gets stretched in this way now. Okay, as a result, there will be two changes. One is the shape change, and second is length variation. Okay, due to the change in the shape, you can see here there is a change in the shape that will brings us a shearing strain. Similarly, the length also varied here. Due to that, we can have a length variation, that will be termed as your longitudinal. Therefore, on applying a weight to a spring, we are getting the two types of the strain. One is longitudinal and another one is shearing strain. Therefore, by observing all the four options, option C is the right one. Moving on to the next one, that is, an aluminium sphere is dipped into water. Which of the following is true? Okay, we are having a aluminium sphere which is dipped into the water. Let us check out the options here. Buoyancy will be more in water at 0 degrees Celsius than that in water at 4 degrees Celsius. Okay, second option, buoyancy may be more or less in water at 4 degrees Celsius depending on the radius of the sphere. Okay, the third option, buoyancy will be less in water at 0 degrees Celsius than that in water at 4 degrees Celsius. And very interestingly, fourth option, buoyancy in water at 0 degrees Celsius will be same as that in water at 4 degrees Celsius. Means the question is purely discussion of the buoyancy. Okay, at a different temperature. What do you mean by the buoyancy? This is the pressure, that this is the force applied by the fluid. Okay, if we are having a container which is filled with the water, okay, if I drop any ball into that, otherwise any object into that, at the same time this fluid also applies certain force on that object, okay, which is equivalent to the weight of that object which is dipped partially or fully. Okay, means it's a basically opposition force. Okay, now if it is so, at what condition the options are more satisfactorily answering the buoyancy at the different temperature? That is the question now. Okay, now therefore what is the equation for the buoyancy? If I take it, it's nothing but force is equal to m into g. I can write it directly. Okay, because it is the force applied by the fluid on the object which is equivalent to the weight, okay, which is dipped partially or fully, and means we can have here f is equal to m into g. Okay, but we are not having here mass and the velocity. Okay, sorry, mass data. Therefore, we can resubstitute mass can be written as product of density and the volume into acceleration due to gravity g. Therefore, f is equal to rho into v into g. Here, density is the density of water and g is the acceleration due to gravity and v is the volume now. Okay, by all these physical quantity, we have to compare one thing here. Okay, and temperatures we have to find out now. We know that at 0 degrees Celsius and the 4 degrees Celsius, if I compare, density will be more at 4 degrees Celsius, okay, than 0 degrees Celsius. Okay, therefore we can write here rho at 4 degrees Celsius is greater than the 0 degrees Celsius. If it is so, from this equation I can write it here, f is directly proportional to rho. Okay, if f is directly proportional to rho, I can rewrite the same equation, that is force at 4 degrees Celsius will be more than the 0 degrees Celsius. Therefore, buoyancy force will be greater at the 4 degrees Celsius comparing to the 0 degrees Celsius. Therefore, check out the answer. Which one is a right one? Buoyancy will be more in water at 0 degrees Celsius than that in water at 4 degrees Celsius. This is a wrong answer now. May or may not. Okay, this is also a wrong answer. Buoyancy will be less in water at 0 degrees Celsius, okay, than that in water at 4 degrees Celsius. Therefore, option C is the right one. Buoyancy will be less in water at 0 degrees Celsius than that in water at 4 degrees Celsius. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Okay, a sphere, a cube and a thin circular plate, all of same material and same mass. Okay, we are having one sphere, okay, and a cube, okay, and a circular plate. It's a 2D, remember, circular plate, all of same material and all of them has the same mass. initially heated to a same high temperature, all of them heated to a same high temperature, are allowed to cool down under the similar condition. All of them allowed to cool under the same condition. If it is so, then cube will cool the fastest and the plate the slowest. Plate will cool the fastest and the cube the slowest. Sphere will cool the fastest and the cube the slowest. The last one, plate will be cool the fastest and sphere the slowest. Okay, these are the four options we are having now. Okay, for this one, we are having one equation, that is specific heat capacity Q is equal to M into small c into capital delta T. Now, here we are discussing about the temperature decline. Okay, that is temperature decreasing. Therefore, write the equation in terms of temperature. Delta T is equal to Q whole divided by MC. Okay, now this Q can be written with the equation of a Stefan's. Okay, what is the Stefan's equation? That is sigma epsilon into A into bracket T raised to 4 T naught raised to 4 whole divided by M into C, where sigma is nothing but the Stefan's-Boltzmann constant and epsilon is emissivity and A is the area of cross section and T is the temperature of the body and T naught is the temperature of the surrounding. Therefore, from all this physical quantity, the required one is what? Only the area. Therefore, delta T is directly proportional to area. Okay, from this equation we can say the body which is having a greater area, the body which is having a greater area, okay, that will cool down early, cools early. Therefore, now check out all these three objects, that is sphere and cube and the plate. Sphere is having always a lesser area. Okay, therefore lesser area for a sphere now. Okay, now therefore there is no question with the sphere. Now the doubt left with what now here? Cube and the plate. Okay, that is a circular plate. Comparing to the cube and the plate, cube is having a smaller area comparing to the plate. Therefore, plate is having a larger area. Okay, and it is a intermediate area. It is a intermediate area. Therefore, comparing all the three objects, we can say plate will cool fastest, because as the theory tells here, greater the area cools early. For example, if we are having a teacup which is too much hot, what is the idea we are doing, making it to cool early? Okay, we are keeping it into the saucer. The same thing we are having here, that is greater the area. Yes. A thermodynamic system undergoes a cyclic process ABC. Here you can see it's a cyclic process ABC. As shown in the diagram, the work done by the system per cycle. Okay, what is the work done for a system per cycle? From the thermodynamic system we are having area under the graph will give us a work done. Area under the graph will give us a work done. Therefore, area under the graph. Area under the graph, that is given by half of base into height. Half of base into height. Here, check out the arrow mark. That is very important. Here we are having a pressure, here we are having a volume. Therefore, this one is a initial volume. This one is a final volume, because arrow runs from B to C. Here it is from A to B. Therefore, this one is initial pressure. This one is a final pressure now. Therefore, half of base here we are having, that is Vf minus of Vi. Okay, this one AB can be written as a height, that is given by, that is Pf minus of Pi. Therefore, half of, what is Vf here? 10 minus of 5. Pf is how much now here? 100 minus of 400. Therefore, on solving this one, we are getting the answer as minus 750 joule. Therefore, for a given question, the work done by the system per cycle is given by minus 750 joule. Therefore, option D is the right one now. Moving on to the next one, that is mean energy of a molecule of an ideal gas they are asking. Okay, therefore let us write down the first equation. Okay, mean energy of a molecule of an ideal gas is given by, that is half of mv square. Okay, that also a purely RMS value. Okay, now we know that RMS velocity for a molecule is given by under root of 3 kT whole divided by m. Yes, we got the VRMS here. Okay, take this VRMS for a given molecule and substitute in the above equation. Therefore, mean energy is given by is equal to half of mass as it is. Okay, VRMS can be written as here under root of 3 kT whole divided by m. Okay, get the square over it now. Okay, square get cancelled, half of m into 3 kT whole divided by m. Therefore, m get cancelled. We are having here 3 by 2 into kT. Therefore, for a given question, 3 by 2 kT is the mean energy of a molecule of an ideal gas. Therefore, option D is the right answer. Moving on to the next question now, that is two simple pendulums A and B made to oscillate simultaneously, and it is found that A completes 10 oscillations in 20 seconds. Okay, 10 oscillations in 20 seconds, and B completes 8 oscillations in how many seconds now? 10 seconds now. Okay, if it is so, the ratio of length of A and B. For this question, we had to go for the very pure equation, that is T is equal to 2 pi under root of L divided by G. Is the standard equation we are having now. Okay, what is T here? Time period. Okay, that time period already we can calculate from the given question only, because they have mentioned what is the number of oscillations per second we are getting here. It is nothing but the frequency, because we know that frequency is given by the equation. Okay, 1 by T. Okay, that equation you know it now. But what is the basic equation of a frequency? Number of oscillations per second. Number of oscillations per second. How? Right. Therefore, now get the reciprocal, because I need to have a time period here. Therefore, if I get the reciprocal over it, I will get the time period, that is T whole divided by N. Now again observe the above value. Okay, here we are having how many oscillations? Okay, and what is the time corresponding to that? Therefore, this value we can substitute with this one. Therefore, for the pendulum A, therefore I can write it here, TA is equal to 2 pi under root of LA whole divided by G. 2 pi under root of LA whole divided by G. Okay, that is small t whole divided by n. Okay, number of oscillation in a time of how much seconds now? 20 seconds. Therefore, I can make it here 20 whole divided by 10 is equal to 2 pi under root of LA whole divided by G. Similarly, for the body B now, okay, that is T subscript B is equal to 2 pi under root of LB whole divided by G. Let us substitute now. Again, go for the same idea. 8 oscillations in 10 seconds. Therefore, 10 whole divided by 8 is equal to 2 pi under root of LB whole divided by G. We got with the two equations, equation 1 and the equation 2. Okay, now get the ratio over them, LA by LB now. LA by LB. Okay, that is, if I get the ratio over them now, that is 2 by 2 pi get cancelled. Okay, root G get cancelled. We left with only here, that is under root of LA whole divided by under root of LB. okay, which is equal to, we are having here 20 whole divided by 10, okay, into, that is 10, 8. Therefore, that is 160 whole divided by 100. Okay, now to get the ratio of LA by LB, okay, we have to square over it. Okay, we have to square over it. Therefore, LA divided by LB. If I square over it now, on solving this equation, we are getting here 64 whole divided by 25. Okay, try to solve this one on your own, and we are getting the answer as how much here? 64 whole divided by 25. This is the direct step for the substitution now. Okay. Yes. A tray of mass 12 kg is supported by two identical springs as shown in the figure. Okay, here we are having trays of mass 12 kg, okay, which is supported by two identical springs. Okay, when the tray is pressed down slightly and released, when this is pressed and released slowly, it executes ESHM with the time period of how much here? 1.5 seconds. Okay, if it is so, the spring constant of each spring they are asking, okay, means they are asking you the K effective for a given data. Okay, for this one we are having one standard equation, T is equal to 2 pi under root of K whole divided by N. T is equal to 2 pi under root of K whole divided by M. Now, here from the given question, already I have mentioned the time period. Okay, they are asking you for the spring constant. Therefore, squaring on both sides, we will get here T square is equal to 4 pi square into K whole divided by M. Okay, solve for the K. K is equal to T square into M whole divided by 4 pi square. Okay, time is how much here? 1.5. 1.5 means you can write here 3 divided by 2 means it will be 3 square by 4. Okay, means 3 square divided by 2 square. That is 3 divided by 2 whole square. Mass is how much now? 12 whole divided by 4 pi square. That is 3.142 whole square. Okay, now solve for the K and we are getting the answer nearly to the 105 Newton per meter. 105 Newton per meter is the right answer for a given spring. That is of how much spring constant? That is of 105 Newton per meter. Moving on to the next one. That is, equation of the wave is given by y is equal to 0.4 sine of 314t minus of 3.14x, where x and y are in meters and t is in seconds. The speed of the wave is, they are asking. Okay, if you observe this equation, it's almost a standard equation. Y is equal to a sine omega t minus of kx. Okay, is this a standard equation? Okay, now comparing this standard equation with this given. Now, what will happen here? Omega is given by 314 and k is given by 3.14. Okay, now with this all data, we need to know what is the speed of the wave. For the speed of the wave, we are having the equation v is equal to omega whole divided by k. Omega is how much now? 314 divided by 3.14. Okay, let us solve it. On solving this one, we are getting here the answer as 100 meter per second. 100 meter per second is the right answer for a given question. Moving on to the next one. That is, a ray of light suffers the minimum deviation when incident on a equilateral triangle. Okay, means it is having an angle of prism as 60 degree. An equilateral prism of refractive index, that is n is equal to root 2. The angle of the incidence they are asking. Okay, Therefore, a ray of light suffers a minimum deviation when incident on an equilateral prism of refractive index root 2, the angle of the incidence they are asking now. Okay, now for this one, which equation will be easier one? We know that for the prism, one equation is already found out from the theory part. N is equal to sine of A plus D whole divided by 2 whole divided by sine of A by 2, where D is the angle of minimum deviation. Okay, now if I found out from this equation, okay, is it possible to get the angle of incidence? Because this one is the angle of incidence and this is the angle of refraction. If you remember, this equation actually derived by sin I by sin R itself now. Okay, therefore this one is I, this one is R. Okay, but this is not sufficient to get the angle of incidence. Okay, therefore we have to solve this equation. Thereafter we have to go for another equation, that is 2I minus A is equal to D. Okay, thereafter we will get the pure answer for the angle of incidence on this prism. Therefore, first solve for this equation. What is that now here? N is equal to, N is what now? Refractive index of a given prism. What is that? Root 2. Now, sine of, okay, angle of the prism is how much now here? 60. Okay, plus D whole divided by 2. Okay, now sine of, okay, now what is the angle of the prism? That is already 60. Okay, that's 60 divided by 2, that will be 30. Solving further, root 2 into sine 30 is equal to sine of, okay, 60 plus D whole divided by 2. 60 by 2 will be 30 plus D whole divided by 2. Okay, now root 2 into sine 30 is how much? That is 1 by 2 is equal to sine of 30 plus D whole divided by 2. Okay, now if I solve this one now, root 2, I can make it a root 2 into root 2, therefore it is coming out to be 1 by root 2. Okay, sine of 30 plus D whole divided by 2. Now 1 by root 2 can be written as sine of 45. Right? 1 by root 2 can be written as sine of 45 degree. Therefore, sine of 30 plus D by 2. Therefore, on solving this one, we are having here 45 degree is equal to 30 plus D by 2. Okay, therefore, 45 minus 30 giving out to be 15 is equal to D whole divided by 2. Therefore, deviation D is equal to 15 into 2, that is equal to 30 degree. Therefore, still we got only the deviation, angle of minimum deviation, D is equal to 30 degree. But I want to have here pure I. We know that is D is equal to 2I minus of A. 2I minus of A. Therefore, 2I is equal to D plus A. Therefore, what is D here? That is 30. What is the angle of the prism? That is 60. Therefore, that is coming out to be 90 degree is equal to 2I now. Therefore, I is equal to 45 degree. I is equal to 45 degree. So, option B is the right answer for given question. Moving on to the next one. That is, the following figure shows a beam of light converging at a point P. Okay. The following figure shows a beam of light which is converging at a point P. When the concave lens of a focal length 16 centimeter is introduced in the path of the beam at a place shown by the dotted line, means when the concave lens is kept at the position of the dotted lines such that OP becomes the axis of the lens, the beam converges at a distance x from the lens. The value of the x will be equal to, what they want to explain here, they are telling we are having a certain number of rays which is converging at point P. Okay, in doing so, they are written on some dotted line. At that position, they are placing a concave lens. If it is so, where is the image, otherwise the refracted image may converge? They are asking the question. Okay, now we know that one idea for the concave lens, focal length is always a negative. For a convex lens, it is positive. For a concave lens, it is negative. Therefore, F is equal to 16 centimeter, but that is of minus 16 centimeter. And they are asking at what distance they may converge. Okay, at what distance they may converge. Okay, one point should be very clear. For the concave lens, the point P will be treated as a virtual object. Therefore, this is behaving like a object, and therefore that distance from this point is given by 12 centimeter, and that is on the right side of the lens. That is on the right side of the lens. Therefore, that will be taken as positive sign. As I want to have your x is nothing but the where the light converges, means where they may form the image, means they are asking actually what is the v. For the lens we know that 1 by f is equal to 1 by v minus of 1 by u. Okay, use this equation and solve it now. Solve the equation for the v now. 1 by v is equal to 1 by f. Okay, 1 by v is equal to 1 by f plus 1 by u. Therefore, what is 1 by v is how much now? 1 by f is how much now? 16. Okay, plus 1 by u is how much now? Yes, it will be 12. On solving this one, we are getting 1 by 48. Therefore, we are having here 48 centimeter. Means the image will be formed somewhere at this position, at this side only. Okay, at how much centimeter? 48 centimeter. Okay, that is at a 48 centimeter from the optic center of the lens. Okay, therefore, for given question, 48 centimeter is the right answer now. Moving on to the next one, that is in Young's double slit experiment, the slits are separated by 2 mm. Okay, that is YDS experiment. Okay, the slits are separated by how much centimeter? Sorry, how much meter? That is 2 mm. They are separated by 2 mm. The screen is placed at a distance of 1.2 meter. Okay, the screen is placed at a distance of how much here? That will be taken as capital D of how much meter? 1.2 meter from the slits. Light consisting of two wavelengths of 6500 and the 5200 angstrom are used to obtain the interference fringes. Means at the position of source, one time they are taking 6400 angstrom and one time as 5200 angstrom. Another time 5200 angstrom. If it is so, then the separation between the fourth fringes of two different patterns produced by the wavelength. Generally, we know that whenever I use the 6400 angstrom, okay, it will form a interference fringes at the screen now. Okay, but what they are asking, the separation between the fourth bright fringes, okay, that is from this position also you have to measure always. Okay, from the central maximum you have to find out what is the distance. Okay, similarly, if I use the same thing, that is of 5200 angstrom instead of 6500 angstrom, then what will happen? Again they are asking at what distance we will get the bright fringe. Therefore, for that we are having an equation, that is distance. Okay, that is given by n into lambda t whole divided by small d. Okay, as here we are having two sources of the light, therefore we can have here x is equal to n can be written as here 4. Okay, but wavelengths we are having two things now, but d and small d both are constant, therefore 4, okay, capital D whole divided by small t into bracket lambda 1 minus lambda 2, we have to solve it. Okay, therefore x is equal to we will obtain here 4 into d is how much? That is 1.2. And lambda 1 is how much now? 6500. Okay, lambda 2 is how much here? It's a 5200. whole divided by small t is how much? That is of 2 mm. Okay, 2 into 10 raised to minus 3. On solving this one, we will get the answer as 0.312 millimeter for a given question. Therefore, option A is the right answer. Moving on to the next one, that is light of wavelength 600 nanometer is incident normally on a slit of width 0.2 mm. Okay, a light of wavelength 600 nanometer is incident normally on a slit width of 0.2. The angular width of the central maxima in the diffraction pattern is, they're asking you what is the angular width of the central maxima in which pattern now? Diffraction pattern. Therefore, we know that first minima, that is angular width of first minima from central maxima is given by lambda by d. Okay, theta is equal to lambda by d. But we need here angular width of the central maxima. Therefore, angular width of central maxima is given by, what is that? 2 times the theta. 2 times the theta. Now we know that the theta, substitute here now. Therefore, is equal to 2 times the theta is how much here? Lambda by d. Okay, now 2 into lambda is how much now? That's 600 nanometer. 10 raised to minus 9 whole divided by, what is slit width? For the slit width we are having a small d. Okay, for the distance from the screen to the slits, that will be the capital D. Therefore, it will be a slit width. That is of how much here? 0.2 mm, means 10 raised to minus 3. Okay, now let's solve this one. On solving this one, we are getting the answer as 6 into 10 raised to minus 3 radian is the answer for the angular width of the central maxima for the diffraction pattern. Moving on to the next one. From the following graph, the photocurrent against collector plate potential for 2 different intensities of light I1 and I2. Okay, one can conclude, means observing the graph, which one is a suitable answer they are asking. I1 is equal to I2, I1 is greater than I2, I1 is less than I2. Comparison is not possible that time. Okay, now if we check out the diagram, one theory we know that is, as we increase the intensity, the photocurrent is also increasing. Let's write it now. As we increase the intensity of light, then photocurrent is also increasing. Okay, now if we increase the intensity every time, then saturation current is also shifting very higher and higher. Okay, these points we know from the theory part. Okay, now observe the graph here. Okay, that is, as we increase the intensity, the current has to increase. Now here check out intensity I1 and intensity I2. Which one is having a greater current value? That is, current will be more at the I2 and current will be less at the intensity I1. Therefore, if I check out from all the 3 options, I can conclude here that is intensity at position 2, otherwise I2 will be more than the I1, because here we are getting a more current, here we are getting a less current. Therefore, I2 is greater than the I1. Therefore, option C is the right answer. Moving on to the next one. That is, a light of certain frequency and intensity incident on a photosensitive material causes the photoelectric effect. We know that by adjusting the frequency and the intensity, we can obtain the photoelectric effect. If both the frequency and the intensities are doubled, the photoelectric saturation current becomes, means on doubling the frequency and the intensity, what will happen? Okay, one idea already I told you, that is as the intensity increased, remember saturation current also increases. As we increase the intensity, the saturation current also increases. But frequency is independent of, that is, frequency is independent of saturation current. That is, on changing the frequency, the saturation current doesn't bring any variation. Okay, therefore, only we can say, even though increase the frequency or decrease the frequency, there is no problem with the saturation current, it remains the same. But for the intensity, it will be doubled. But as the question they are asking, by collaborating both the frequency and the intensity, as this doesn't matter anything, okay, we can leave as it is. But intensity, if it is doubled, then automatically the saturation current is also doubled. Therefore, for a given question, if I check out the data, that is, intensity if doubled, then saturation current also doubled, is the proper and the right answer for a given question. Moving on to the next one, that is, proton and an alpha particle are accelerated through the same potential difference of V. The ratio of their de Broglie wavelength is, okay, we know that de Broglie wavelength lambda is equal to h divided by under root of 2m into energy. Okay, energy here we are writing as your product of charge into potential difference. Now here we are having two charges. One is a charge as a proton and another charge as an alpha particle. Okay, therefore we had to write the ratio over them, that is lambda for the proton to the lambda for the alpha particle. Let us write it now. Therefore, first step we will write here lambda p for the proton. Okay, therefore we will use that equation, h is equal to under root of 2m. Okay, now here E can be written as q into v. Okay, q into v, as both of them accelerated through the same potential difference, therefore V remains the same now. Okay, but which charge I am taking here? Proton. Okay, therefore Qp and the mass of the proton is mp. Okay, similarly for an alpha particle, h divided by under root of 2 times the m into q into v. Again V remains same, but it will be the alpha. Okay, we know that one idea, that is mass of alpha particle is 4 times the mass of the proton and charge of the alpha particle is 2 times the charge of the proton. Okay, use these values in the above equation. Therefore lambda alpha h whole divided by under root of 2 times the 4 times the mp into, that is q alpha can be written as here 2 times the q p into v. Therefore we are ready with the two equation, equation 1 and equation 2. Now get the ratio over them now. Lambda p whole divided by lambda alpha now. Okay, if you check out the equations directly, h gets cancelled, root to get cancelled, mp, qp, v get cancelled directly. Okay, therefore at the numerator, okay, yes, it completely cancel off. Okay, here we are having only what now? 4 into 2. Okay, we are having here how much now? 4 into 2. Okay, it goes to the numerator. Under root of 8 we are getting, but in the option we are not having root 8. But we can write it here 2 root 2. Therefore, option B is the right answer for your given question. Now, moving on to the next one. The total energy of an electron revolving around the hydrogen atom, okay, in the second orbit. They are asking the total energy of an electron revolving in the second orbit of hydrogen atom. They are asking. This is a very direct, straightforward question here. E is equal to, in which orbit they are asking? Second orbit. Therefore, we are having a standard equation. minus 13.6 whole divided by n square. As n is equal to 2, substitute E subscript 2 is equal to minus of 13.6 whole divided by n can be written as here 2 square means minus of 13.6 whole divided by 4. Therefore, minus 13.6 whole divided by 4 leads to the minus of 3.4 electron volt. Therefore, option C is the right answer. Moving on to the next one. The energy required to excite an electron from n is equal to 2 to n is equal to 4 state in a hydrogen atom. Let us say if I consider the atom, this one will be the nucleus, n is equal to 1, n is equal to 2, n is equal to 3 and it will be n is equal to 4. Now, what is our aim? I want to make an electron to jump from n is equal to 2 is equal to n is equal to 4. Means I am doing here excitation of an electron. Therefore, it's nothing but the excitation energy required. Therefore, excitation energy, that is delta E is equal to 13.6 1 divided by n1 square minus of 1 by n2 square. Otherwise, they can also write it here, that is ni and the nf also. Ni square minus of 1 by nf square also you can write it now. Therefore, 13.6 whole divided by that is ni, otherwise n1 is equal to how much now here? 2, that is equal to 4 because 2 square will leads to the 4. Now, n is equal to 4. Okay, n is equal to 4, that is nf is equal to 4. Means how much it is? That is 4 square, that is coming out to be 16. Okay, therefore, let us solve this one. On solving this one, we will obtain the answer nearly is equal to 2.55. Okay, 2.55 electron volt is the answer for a given question. Moving on to the next one. That is, two protons are kept at a separation of 10 nanometer. Okay, that is two protons, proton 1 and proton 2 are kept at a certain distance of how much nanometer? 10 nanometer. Let Fn and Fe be the nuclear forces and the electromagnetic forces. Nuclear force we are having F subscript N. For the electromagnetic force we are having F subscript E. Okay, if it is so, now check out the data. Okay, thereafter answer the question now. Two protons they are given, how they are kept also they are mentioned, within what distance. Okay, but in the option they are asking us to compare the forces, that is nuclear and the electromagnetic. We know that electrostatic force is a long range force. Okay, but nuclear force is a short range force. What is the range of the nuclear forces? Okay, it is existing in between 10 raised to minus 15 meter. But what is the electrostatic force? Otherwise, electromagnetic force range, it will be a larger. Now check out the data. Fe is greater than Fn. Fe and Fn differ only slightly. Fe is equal to Fn or Fe is very less than the Fn. Now, one point is clear, nuclear force is existing in between the charges which are lying at a distance of 10 raised to minus 15 meter. But in the given data, the charges are kept at a distance of how much meter? 10 nanometer, which is too much greater than this one. Therefore, there is no question of existence of the nuclear force between them. Therefore, more dominant force existing between these charges will be electromagnetic force. Therefore, for a given distance, remember, for a given distance, electromagnetic force is greater than the nuclear force. Therefore, Fe is greater than the Fn. That is, option A is the right answer. Moving on to the next one. A positive hole in a semiconductor is an artificially created particle, an antiparticle of an electron, a vacancy created when an electron leaves the covalent bond, absence of free electrons. When I draw the crystal of the semiconductor, okay, here we are having a silicon crystal. Okay, it has 4 valence electron It has 4 valence electrons. Okay. This is how we are having the construction for the silicon. Now, positive hole will be created when we break any one of the covalent bond. Okay, one electron become free. One electron become free. At the same time, behind that there is a creation of some hole here. Okay, therefore, this hole is created only when the covalent bond is broken and that electron should escape from that position. Then only there is a creation of a hole, and that one we are treating it as a positive charge one. Therefore, from observing all the option, an artificially created particle, no. Okay, it's not a right one now. An antiparticle of an electron, no, that also is not a right answer. The absence of free electrons, no. The vacancy created when an electron leaves a covalent bond. Therefore, option C is the right answer for a given question. Moving on to the next one. That is, in the following circuit, what are P and the Q we have to calculate. We have to select what is the good data from the option, okay, which is more suitable. Okay, that's our aim now. Okay, now if you check out the symbol, okay, which type of gate it is? It's a mixture of NOT gate and the AND gate. Okay, it's a mixture of NOT gate and AND gate. That leads to the NAND gate. That leads to the NAND gate. Now, if I want to simplify this one, we have to draw the first truth table. That will be very simpler one. Okay, where I can have a 0 and when I can have a 1. Okay, that can be found out very early. Okay, let us write down the truth table for a given NAND gate, because here only the gates which are available for us is a NAND gate now. Okay, as here we are having two inputs, therefore A, B, okay, and corresponding to that NAND gate we have to make it here. Okay, therefore 0 0 0 1 1 0 1 1. Okay, 0 0 0 0 0. Okay, but here it is 1. But NAND gate means it's a negation of it. Therefore A dot B bar we have to make it. Okay, therefore this is the actual truth table for the NAND gate. Therefore it will be exactly negation of it 1 1 1 0. Means if I check out this table and this table, okay, that gives us a truth table for the NAND gate, right? Okay. Now, keenly observe, if any one of the input is having 0, if any one of the input is having, the output is high. Okay, means if we are having here 0, if we are having 0, then there is no doubt that our Q value must carry 1 itself. Okay, any data we can put, because here already we are having 0. Okay, if we are having the 0 in the beginning only, then there is too much guarantee that I should get Q as a 1. Okay, therefore, if this is a Q1, okay, this has to be given in the reverse way to the first NAND gate. If it is giving is a 1, okay, if we are having 1 1, what is the answer now? 0. Therefore, Q will be carrying 1 and P is carrying a 0. Therefore, by comparing our answers with our analysis, we can say P with the 0, Q with the 1. Therefore, option C is the right and correct answer for a following circuit. Okay, these are the some questions. The next question we are having, the process of heat transfer in which heat is transferred with the actual migration of the medium particles is known as, they are asking, that is the method of heat transfer where we are observing the actual migration of the particles of the medium. Okay, if I check out the answer, that is conduction, convection, radiation and the reflection we are having. Without any doubt, we can exclude the radiation and the reflection. The only doubt left with us is either it may be conduction or convection. Remember, in the conduction, there is no actual movement of the particle of the system. Okay, in this method, heat is transferred from one side to another side only due to the vibration of those particles of the medium. But in the convection there will be the actual migration, otherwise motion of the particle of the medium from one side to another side. Very standard example, if I take it from the NCERT, that is one is a sea breeze and the land breeze. Otherwise, if I take a hot cup tea, okay, there we are observing some steam coming out of it. Okay, that is also one of the example for the convection, because tea is a hotter one. Okay, from that we are getting the steam into the what now our surrounding, which is at a lower temperature, means there is a transfer of heat from hot cup to the surrounding. Okay, that is nothing but the example for the convection. Therefore, for a given question, convection is the right answer, otherwise B is the proper answer. Moving on to the next one. That is the dominant mechanism for the motion of charge carriers in the forward bias and the reverse bias of a silicon PN junction. Okay, they are discussing about the dominant mechanism in forward and the reverse. Let us check out the option, which mechanism they are discussing. That is, one is drift and the diffusion. Okay, let us read out the options. Drift is in forward. Okay, diffusion is in the reverse bias. Like that, they are explaining about the which one is dominant in forward and the reverse in the first option. Similar in the second option, they are telling drift is more in the reverse and diffusion is observed more in the forward. In the third option, diffusion will be observed both in forward and the reverse. But in the fourth option, they are telling drift is observed both in forward and the reverse. To explain this question, I have to go for the basic idea behind the PN junction. How can we form the PN junction? That is, at one side we are having P, which is more dominant in positive charge carriers. Otherwise, we can say it as a hole. That is, holes are majority charge carriers. At the N side, electrons are the majority charge carriers. Okay, and here electrons are the minority charge carriers. Here holes are the minority charge carriers. Now they are discussing in both forward and the reverse. Let us discuss in the beginning for the forward bias. In the forward bias, I have to connect P to the positive side and N to the negative side. When I make it as a positive, this will be at a higher potential, this one will be at a lower potential. There is one idea we should know, that is, at the middle of the PN junction we are observing the depletion layer. Here we are having negative charge carriers and at this side we are having the positive charge carriers. Moment I make the system under the forward bias condition, slowly what will happen, the holes in the P side will transfer or move towards the N side and electrons towards the N side will move towards the P side. Okay, this process we are calling it as diffusion. That is, motion of the holes from P to the N side. Similarly, electrons from N to the P side will use us a diffusion process. Okay, but if I get into the reverse bias condition, that is, at one side again we are having the same thing, P and the N. Okay, but only the change I am doing here, P side is connected to the negative and N side is connected to the positive. And here we are having a depletion layer. Here is the majority charge carriers. Okay, here are the minority charge carriers. But actually what will happen under the reverse bias condition? That is, this will be at a lower potential, this will be at a higher potential. As a result, what will happen? Most charge, that is dominant, otherwise majority charge carriers will be away from the depletion layer. Similarly, here electrons are the majority, they are away from the depletion layer. Therefore, the only minority charge carriers are available for us here. Only minority charge carriers are available for us. Okay, what will happen to these minority charge carriers? Due to this depletion potential, because here is a positive layer and here we are having a negative layer, that also forms a electric field. That also forms a electric field. As a result of this electric field, the minority charge carriers in the p type get drifted towards the n side. Similarly, due to this depletion potential, the minority charge carriers in the n side, what are those? Positive charge get drifted towards the p side. Therefore, in the reverse bias condition, we are observing more drifting rather than the diffusion. But in the forward bias, we are observing the more diffusion rather than the drifting. Therefore, by observing this analysis, I can conclude here that is in the forward bias we are observing the diffusion due to the majority charge carriers, and in the reverse bias we are observing the drifting of the charge carriers due to the minority charge carriers. Let us see the options. On observing the option, we can say that is drift is in the reverse and the diffusion in the forward. Therefore, option B is the right answer for a given question. Okay, this is the part 1, part 2 of the our model question paper. Okay, and all the best for your upcoming exam. Thank you.